Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen and here, share. Okay, so, well, actually, hold on, let me go back.
No, I calculated mine wrong.
Okay, so is it's 11 was our last one, yeah.
Yes, so it's number 9, number 5,
Okay,
let's do this.
5, yeah. So yeah, so this one is, so the seller's after tax price, remember we go up here and we find the buyer's after tax price, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just subtract off the tax, which in this case is 15. So it says that it looks like to me, yeah, that's where they cross. Yeah, because you can see all the bubbles come up at once. So you see the buyers is 67 and then minus the taxes 15. So 67 minus 15 should be 52. Do you see what I mean, Beverly?
Yes.
So if I put 52 in here, submit, and then hopefully because I read the question really quickly, I didn't goof anything up. There you go. Boom.
Oh, it was that easy. Why didn't I didn't know what happened.
Yeah, I know. So some people came and talked with me a little bit on Thursday, because we do Thursday at 11 too, and it's office hours, and I don't record that. And people ask questions like that too. But the main thing here is, and I don't even know if I can put this in the thing, is it's PV is equal to PB minus tax. That's the equation. I just typed it in the calculator, even though just because it's there.
Yeah, I remember it's the whiteboard, but I didn't know how I messed it up.
Oh. I'd like to say, but it's really simple, because it's, like in our case, it's just,
yeah, that's like the simplest one.
yeah. So but anyway, and then you said number 10,
number 9,
5 and 9. Okay. So how much revenue does the government generate? So this one is a little bit more challenging, because here you end up with the and it just depends on if you can kind of see it. I'll try to like draw it out with my cursor, but here we got the shift in the demand curve, and so now we have the seller's after tax price, and then there's a rectangle here, like on our graph, that's the height of the distance between these two, which is the amount of tax, which is 7 in this case. So there's just a rectangle with a height of 7 that is that distance, which is our after-tax quantity, which is 9.38 units, right? So I don't know if you have a calculator, but if we do 7 times 9.38, so
65.66.
yeah, so 65.66, and that should be right. Yeah.
Okay, I feel so dumb right now.
Well, honestly, I don't feel bad, but I don't know if you did this or not. I can just, like, what I would have done, and I'll go ahead and share the whiteboard. If I was going to do this like myself, like I said, I would start out with having this little graph next to me, and so there's demand, and this isn't the only graph, but this is like the main one. This is like the tax wedge diagram, and so there's the tax, and there's this,
PV,
yeah,
that's the PV.
yeah, right. And you could label those. I mean, PB and PV, but then remember that this distance here
It's the tax.
is the tax, right? So then this is tax revenue, that square. I mean that what's a rectangle, and this up here is
The-
CS with the tax, and here is the
the
PS with the tax, and that
debt.
triangle there's the is the dead weight loss. There's the triangle there. So this is like, again, if I was gonna do this, I would have this picture sitting next to me on my desk. So when I looked at the Ignithium graphs for each question, I could, identify each of the areas that was being calculated. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's what I think is easiest to do.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Okay, so now let's go back to Ignithium. And so this week, and let's go. So you'll notice on a few of these, this may make you guys feel better or not, but if you go to, this is the practice for 12, okay? And it has all 10 questions, okay? And then, here's the quiz for 12, and it has 10 questions. So you all can practice and get it exactly right the way that you want to, and then move over, and it'll make your life like a lot easier. And I sent you the the 2 videos. I mean, they're on your playlist. So just so you know, we've moved in. There are 2 playlists for this course, right, that I constructed. So here's the playlist. Can you see the playlists, Beverly?
Yeah, how do I get to the playlist?
Well, I sent you guys a link to the playlist on Blackboard, and I don't know if you subscribe to the YouTube channel or not, but here's Blackboard. And if I go, can you see the announcements for Blackboard now?
Mm-hmm.
If I go to the announcements for, it's going to make me log in again. So, but if you go to the announcements for Blackboard, and I mean, let's just suppose, well, okay. I don't want to log in again because it's going to do, maybe, it saved it. Yay. Because I have this dual authentication. I don't know if you guys have signed up for it or not.
It is the worst system ever.
Yeah.
I love that if I'm on my phone, it has me dual authenticate if I log into Blackboard on my phone from my phone. It's a great system.
Anyway, I'm just saying, it's like, I'm not complaining. I don't mind getting the pushes, but these are the two lectures from the playlist. But if we go down to like earlier announcements, recent lectures, homework quizzes, it's one of the first ones that I posted. SI sessions, blah blah blah. Well, introductory lecture. Maybe I need to post the second playlist. But if I was to grab any of these links, because they're all like from it, right? Let's see. Let's see if I go. I'm trying to make it like simple. Well, I wonder if I even go to the live lecture recordings. Okay, I go to live lecture recording. Okay, so now I'm on YouTube, right?
Yes.
And I'm gonna pause it, and then I just go to the channel page, like learn the econ.
Okay.
You see? And
Yes.
then I'm here, and there's a link for playlists,
All right.
and then you're there. That's the
Okay.
playlist.
Yeah.
And so you'll see principles part 1 and principles part 2, and I don't know. Let's see if I can do this. So this is a principles part 2, and here are all the lectures for finishing up, because we're in the second half of the class, and I'll just, well, see, if I do that, it's not gonna let me share the playlist. I have to go on a different page to share the playlist. Anyway, but you can see the playlist there, and these are all our topics, and they're roughly sorted in like the order in which we cover them.
Yes. Like which homework actually?
Yeah. So here you can see the elasticity ones, and then we move into all the cost stuff, which is next.
Mhm.
And then we get into competition, and then monopoly. So, and then our last topics are like externalities and monopolistic competition. So they're sorted in basically the same order, even though maybe the titles aren't exactly transparent. But you can see cost. So when you get cost stuff, it's there. And this is comp firm. So if you read them and look at the titles for the homeworks, you'll see a correspondence. But what I was going to tell you is that we are in the second half, and so that's the playlist we'll be referring to now. And so the next thing I wanted to point out, so now we're back onto the practice and the homework. So the practice. So elasticity, again, you should watch the videos, but I just want to give you guys like a quick overview. So elasticity is a measure of the responsiveness of one variable to another. So another word for elasticity is like flexibility, right? And so, but we use the word elasticity in economics. And so what we're really trying to get at is we want to measure how responsive or flexible demand and supply are in response to changes in prices. So, and the deal is that, you might, see when we look at the graphs on Ignithium that we have prices and exact quantities for a lot of our stuff that we're working on. So there's not really a big question about the responsiveness. But generally speaking, the way that people normally start out, and if you were to look at some of the early questions that we started out doing with shifts in demand and supply, you end up with something like this sort of an analysis. Okay, so here is our basic demand and supply graph. I'll draw it out. Here's demand, and here's supply. And then, like, I'll just draw it like this. And then you remember, we would say something like this. Oh, for supply, if there's an increase in the price of an input. So like a good example is, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Starbucks and you've seen them, they use gallons of milk, right? Because they're making lattes and stuff all day. And the Starbucks that I used to go to, a lot of times, like in the middle of the day, they would send one of their employees over to the grocery store that was just across the parking lot, and they would buy a bunch of gallons of milk and just literally bring them over from the grocery store. And so obviously milk is a really important input. And remember, we said that the supply curve is the costs of production. So the technical term is it's the marginal cost of production. We'll talk about that in more detail, but I just want to, emphasize right now that it's cost. So if the price of milk goes up, then the costs are going to increase, right? And that's a decrease in supply. That's a leftward shift. And then we would just say, well, okay, we didn't say how much, right? We just said that supply decreased, and we know that we're going to move from, this original equilibrium, right, to this new equilibrium, and I'll put it in pink, this new equilibrium, and there's going to be an increase in the price, right? I can draw that. If I look at the two equilibria, I can say, oh, well, what's going on here is there's, as we move from the orange to the pink one, there is an increase in the price, and there's a decrease in the quantity, right? Do you see that? You see what I mean, Beverly?
Yes.
But everything that I did here is because I just talked about the direction. This is just about the direction of the changes. I don't have specific numbers. So we would call this qualitative analysis, because we're talking about, the direction in which things are going. We're not talking about how much. Well, elasticity is how economists actually talk about how much you're going to get a change in quantity when you have a change in price. Okay. So notice in this case, we moved these two equilibria are two different points on the demand curve. So we would talk about the elasticity, and I think I'm recording. Oh yeah, I'm recording, good. We would talk about the elasticity in this range of the demand curve here. So moving from the orange to the pink point, or from the pink to the orange point, it doesn't matter whether you start at one or the other. It's the same region of the demand curve. And we would assign a number to that. And if we ended up with a big number, then we would say that the curve was highly elastic. And if we ended up with a small number, we would say that the curve is inelastic, meaning it's not very flexible. And so this chapter is about how do we calculate elasticity, and it's kind of a little bit complicated. So I'm going to give you guys a really quick introduction. So and this is also in the videos, but the first elasticity we calculate is the one that we just talked about, which is the elasticity of demand. So I'm going to abbreviate that as ED. And it's the percentage change, I'll put a D for change, in the quantity demanded over the percentage change in the price of the good. So I could put PD. So I could kind of translate this a little bit. So this is, so that's in symbols. In words, what I said is it's the percent change in the quantity demanded, and then I'll draw a little line here, divided, okay, by, and maybe it helps a little bit if I do this. I just want to make sure everybody's clear. So I'll see if I can put some brackets here. And I don't really have a division symbol, but I would use one if I had one. So I'm just going to go back to the slash. Okay. Divided by the percent change in price. Okay. Okay. So the tricky part about this is that calculating the percent change is a little bit complicated. So the first part of it is, so the percent change in Q, okay. Well, normally you would have, you know, the change in Q, right, divided by some starting Q value, okay? And that's like pretty straightforward and you know, not very complicated, but there's another kind of layer to this, and that is, so the change in the quantity is just going to be, let's say Q2 where we end up minus where we started. Okay, that's fine. But this is where they kind of waffle on the definition, meaning they make it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. And there's a reason for it. And again, if you read the section in your book and you go through the lecture thoroughly, then you'll find out that the real issue is it's the same region here of the demand curve, whether we're going from the pink to the orange or from the orange to the pink. And in order to calculate that as being the same elasticity value, they have to pick a neutral point. And so what they do is they pick the midpoint. So this calculation method that I'm showing you is actually called the arc elasticity or midpoint method. It turns out that it's not the only method for calculating elasticity, but it's the one that's preferred for some good reasons that they detail in your book. The main one is that you get consistency whether or not you start out at Q2 and go to Q1, or if you were to start out at Q1 and go to Q2. And so the value they use for the denominator of the percentage is the average of Q1 and Q2, which is the midpoint. And so you calculate that as Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. It's just the simple average. And that's what you use as the base in your denominator. And you would do the exact same thing for the percentage change in price, obviously just using P1 and P2. The only thing to be careful about is that, and I'll get rid of these for a minute, is you have to, however you put Q1 and Q2 in the formula, you have to make sure that you match up the same price quantity pair with each other. So for example, if I call this one Q1, then I better make sure that the price over here matched with it is P1. And then I could call this one P2 and this one Q2. Do you see what I mean? But if I wanted to call this one in my formula, if I wanted to call this one P1, that would be fine. But then I have to make sure I switch my labels and have the right label for the associated Q, and then switch these labels too. Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
So I just have to match up the right price quantity pair and make sure that I use the same one. And again, if I wanted to, you know, go ahead and copy all of this, it'll let me. Okay, and then do percent change in P, then it's everything just follows through. And again, I just have to make sure that I have the order of the P's and the Q's the same in both these calculations. Okay. In order to make sure that I get everything right. And so now I've calculated the percentage change in the quantity and the percentage change in the price. And then I just plug those back in to, let's see, I'll use a different color. I just plug those values that I get out here back into the right place in the formula. There's the numerator, and this one is the denominator. And then I'll end up getting a number out. And that number will be my elasticity. There's one last little wrinkle to this whole thing. And that is, when you're dealing with the elasticity of demand, okay, it turns out that the whole thing, at the end, you end up getting a negative value. And this is only true for the elasticity of demand. But it turns out that, and let me see if I can get this, at the end, we end up taking the absolute value. So we get rid of the negative sign. Okay. And let me see. Maybe I'll put it over here someplace. Like that. And over here, I'll put in red text. For elasticity, use absolute value. For elasticity of demand, and I'll try to only. Okay, so you're going to calculate other elasticities, like elasticity of supply, for example. And for elasticity of supply, you don't have to worry about taking the absolute value at the end. But for elasticity of demand, you do, just in order to get the calculations right. So that's a brief overview. So let's go ahead and go back to the problems. If you notice, this whole thing, and again, the way that I would start out is it's going to say, consider the following 2 points on a demand curve. So what I would do, again, if I was going to do this, is I would go ahead and, you know, get out a piece of paper, and I would basically go ahead and have, this graph, at least for the first one. The other one is, they might be talking about elasticity of supply or something else. But so they're talking about, they say 2 points on a demand curve. So I'd have this picture, and then, we would have point number 1. If you want this, it doesn't say which one has to be point 1, which one has to be point 2. And then here's another point, right? And then you have that picture, and then you can go back and you can go ahead and just fill it in, okay? Point A, so they're using A and B instead of 1 or 2, which is maybe better. So price of 85 and quantity demanded of 4. So that's fine, okay? And so you guys, maybe I can go ahead and just grab this whole thing and I'll paste it into our example. And new share, back to our whiteboard. So now I have all the details of the question. So there's our question. Okay. Can everybody see that? That's the same question. I just pulled it off of Ignithium. What about you, Mitchell? You following this?
I'm gonna be honest. My apartment did an inspection, so when I turned off my camera, I was not at my desk. So at this point, I'm listening just to try and follow along. I missed the solid 20 minutes. I'll watch again, or not 20.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So it says point A is 85 with a quantity demanded of 4. So let's go ahead. So this is 1 point, 85. And we know this is the quantity demanded is 4. Beverly, you see that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it says that point B has a price $23 less. So that's going to be 85 minus 23 is going to be $62. And it says it's got 1 more unit. So that makes it pretty easy. So this is just at 5 over there, right? And then it says, using the midpoint method, what is the average quantity in the range between point A and point B? Well, gee, that makes it easy. So they're just asking us to compute one part of our formula, which is the average. The average is just 4 plus 5 divided by 2, right? So
4.5.
Right, so it's 4 plus 5 is 9 divided by 2 is 4.5, right?
Yes.
So that's pretty easy. So we'll do our new share and share, and we'll put in 4.5 and submit. And you can kind of see this, actually it's pretty easy because it's 4 plus 5 divided by 2. So that's right. I mean, we could put it in the calculator if we wanted to, but that one was really easy. We got it right. And now what's the average price? Well, we do the same thing, but now we've got, if we go back to our picture, right, we've got 2 different prices down here. So we got to calculate the average price there. And then it walks us through calculating our percentage change. So, and just pay attention because it's saying if you have 32.5%, you just want to report 32.5, right? You don't have to put the percent sign in there. So yeah, so I think that all of these are pretty straightforward. It just walks you through the calculation of calculating the elasticity of demand in the first 5 questions. And then these other ones you're going to have to watch. They're multiple choice, and so they'll be pretty easy. But you know, if you're curious, make sure you watch the elasticity lectures carefully, and you'll be able to see when we start to talk about income elasticity and elasticity of supply, and then we talk about these different labels of, you know, perfectly inelastic and perfectly elastic. You'll be able to walk through it. Now, I will tell you, this assignment on Ignithium is easy because it has all of the practice problems are the same as the like we did at the beginning, the same as the quiz problems. So you should be able to go through it pretty quickly. Try to make sure you understand what's going on, because if you get the same question on the final and you don't understand it, then you know you should ask about it, because on the final, you know, the practice won't be available. So this is your chance to learn the material. But elasticity is a good like transition topic, because we're really moving to new material that's not related. And in general, even though elasticity is something that's used frequently by economists in practice, if you were going to be a practicing economist, you'd be dealing with elasticities all day. It turns out that there are only a few questions in our Principles of Economics course outside of this one chapter that deal with the topic of elasticity. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, pretty straightforward, and hopefully you guys are working on the hand-drawn assignment and all that stuff anyway. It doesn't you know, take up too much of your time. Okay, and like I said, outside of this particular chapter, you know, we would have just one or two occasions to bring up the concept of elasticity again. So it's not like it's a vitally, you know, central topic for our course. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but I'm devoting about as much time to elasticity as I think that we need to. So if you don't have any questions, then I'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording.
I actually have a question.
Okay, who's chatting? Jared?
Yeah.
Okay, hey Jared.
Are we gonna be asked about like elasticity of supply? Or are we just dealing with demand right now?
No, you can see that there is a question about elasticity of supply down here, number 7. Right? And then there's
Okay.
a little bit more, right? So yeah. But it's just these 10 questions. So you could look through them and see what are the topics. Okay, is that it? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Professor.
Sure, okay.